Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Here I Am podcast. I am Anjay, also known as a dork who lifts on the TikToks and the Instagrams. And I am here with the amazing Suzanne Orlando, or as you may know her
Hey.
as the Anxiety Alchemist on Instagram and the TikToks. Hi, Suzanne. How are you?
I'm good, Anjay. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I just got out of like a change your algorithm class, and like
Oh,
so I usually do like the Wednesday classes with Dr. Wendy,
okay.
and we talked about like the vagus nerve, and
Okay.
uh something like hardcore unlocked for me on that one, and it just made me go, oh shit, like this isn't my fault, like this is like something I was born with, not outside. Like I know, like, traumas or anything that you go through is like never your fault. It's just one of those, like,
Right.
it's just one of those things, like, oh, there's actually something physically wrong with me too. So that's where I was
So
like, oh,
right. I mean, was it validating to you, or was it like was it like this is another thing that now I have to deal with?
no, it was actually kind of validating for me. Like,
Good.
yeah, yes, it's like okay, there's another thing I have to deal with, but it's also like, you know, I have tools to help regulate it and help like boost it
Mm-hmm.
when I need to. And I was just like, oh, that's just so interesting. And it was literally just like going, like, she was talking about like how the vagus nerve and like the vagal tones that we can get from our bodies can go all the way back to when the mother is carrying you, and how she can pass her low vagal tones onto the child. And not,
Mm-hmm.
it's not their fault. It's just stuff that like anxiety, stress, whatever, like that type of
Yeah.
thing get passed on. And then for me, it was my birth mother did drugs during the pregnancy, and that was like something
Oh,
else. And then I just
okay.
went, oh shit, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like I have like no, like, for me, like things that have happened to me, I'm not angry at the other person type of thing. um
Right.
but it's just kind of like one of those, like, oh, they were going through something with their life, and then that kind of got passed on to me, and like, okay, I'll deal. But yeah, so that's how I am
Yeah.
today. Like that whole
Okay.
long
A
story.
lot of information to
So
learn and understand, and still processing it as we're discussing. So,
as we're
that's
discussing all the things that we're going to discuss today, yeah. So I was just like,
yeah.
I got out of that class, so I went, oh shit. And I've literally been kind of just like sitting here for like the last hour or so going, all right, we gotta like just kind of process and breathe through that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so here we are with you. Speaking of change your algorithm, that is how you and I have met.
That's
um
how we connected. Yes.
that is how we connected. For people who don't know, Suzanne, I'll let you give it like a little background about yourself instead of me doing it.
All right, cool. So yes, Anjay and I met on Change Your Algorithm, which is a free mental health platform for anybody. Free classes several times a week, provided by mental health professionals. It's an incredible platform. So that's where we met. I do run classes there most Tuesday evenings, and we talk about all kinds of things. In my classes, we talk about anxiety. We talk about uh, things related to that. We talk about, I'm stumbling on my words right now. I'm on the spot.
No, it's fine.
People pleasing. We talk about strategies, how to work through and move through our emotions, how to accept our emotions for what they are. So that's the change your algorithm piece. Do you want me to talk a little bit about professional background?
Yeah, your professional background. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm a psychotherapist. So what that means, we hear there's all different kinds of therapists out there. So what that means is I'm basically a talk therapist. So under the realm of psychology, that's what I do. I work with people one-on-one in a private practice setting, and we do therapy together. My credentials are a licensed clinical social worker. So I'm an LCSW, which gives me the ability to do the work that I do. I've been practicing psychotherapy for about 16 years up in northern New Jersey. And in addition to that, I used to be a school social worker on a child study team. So I have a lot of knowledge about school and kids in school and academics and things like that as well. But my favorite thing to do is psychotherapy. That's a little bit about
That
me.
that's awesome. So what I'm always interested, like, because like going into therapy is such like a like most people, like I have friends who are therapists, and it was just because like they were affected by therapy that made them want to go into therapy. So what was it for
Mhm.
you that made you want to go down that route?
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar umbrella, right? Basically, and I'm going to get emotional because I'm a crier. I'm an ugly crier. So putting it out there. I know I'm in good company, and that's okay.
Don't worry,
So,
I'll probably cry too, so it's fine.
so I'm going to take a deep breath. Okay. So I got it when I started going to therapy. I went to therapy after I was raped at the age of 18 at a party. And a friend of mine who was a newer friend of mine at the time, whose home it was, who was friends with the person who raped me, when it all came, when I disclosed what had happened, no questions asked, he confronted the guy, and the guy admitted what he did. And my friend, again, I had known this friend for several months, the one whose house it was at. He confronted his friend, and he basically told his friend to get the fuck out of his house and never talk to him again. So no questions asked. He totally believed me, which was awesome, exactly what I needed in that moment. And then he said to me, I'm calling my therapist. So he called his
Oh
therapist,
wow, yeah.
got her on the phone because he didn't know what else to do. She talked him through a couple of things, and then he looked at me and he said, I have a session with her in a couple of days, you're coming with me. So I went with him to his therapist, and long story short, she became my therapist. And through the work that we did, in addition to working through the trauma of the rape, there was also anxiety and depression that I had struggled with historically, but never really did anything with it. So through the work that we did together, I started to make some changes. It didn't happen overnight. It was
No,
years and
yeah.
years of
Yeah,
work,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I really started, my initial thought when I was going through this, I'm like, holy shit, this woman is saving my life. But now looking back at it and going through that process for a long period of time, I was like, she is saving my life. I now know, after going through the process and everything that I've done in my career and my life, I know that she was giving me the tools to help me save my own life, right?
Yeah.
So that, which was very interesting. But going back to the original question of how I came into therapy, as I went through this process with her, I was like, I want to be where she is. I want to do what she's doing for other people,
Yeah.
because I recognized the change that she was enabling me to bring out in myself. And I wanted nothing more to do it where she sat. But caveat here is I hated school. I hated
Yeah.
school. I never tried. I wanted nothing to do with it. Total free spirit, like so many other interests that I had. And I didn't think I was smart enough to be able to do the work that she was doing, because I recognized that it was not just go to college for 4 years. And even just go to college for 4 years was like, holy shit, like that was
Yeah,
not my
yeah,
jam.
yeah.
Right. So I actually started going to college because that's what you're supposed to do in where I live and who my parents are and the area that I live in. And I ended up, this is an important part of my story. I ended up going to 4 different undergrad schools in the course of 6 years. I started out studying fashion because I wanted to be a fashion designer, but I have no artistic bone in my body. So so that didn't work out for obvious reasons. But I wanted to do things in the creative space. And it actually wasn't until I ended up dropping out of, I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology. I dropped out. I was going through a really rough time of depression in my life. I dropped out of college and didn't even tell my parents. That's a whole other like mess. So there's a lot going on in my world at that point.
Yeah.
And then when I had dropped out of school. I started going back to college, taking courses here and there. But I really wanted to study psychology. I really wanted to do that. But again, I still didn't believe I had the ability to do that. I didn't think I was smart enough to do it. Until I met my husband. I met my husband when I was 21. And he had just graduated from college when I met him. And when I met him, he was kind of unlike any guy that I had ever met or dated before, because this friend who brought me to his therapist, who was my best friend at the time,
Yeah.
he was the guy, he was the friend, my guy friend, who would always like look at the guys I was dating and like tell me why I shouldn't be dating them. And
Oh,
he had
I
a very
got you.
good judge of character, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when he met my husband, the first words out of his mouth after about 10 minutes, he's like, so what's the catch? what's the catch with this one? Because he recognized that my husband had that he was different than all the other guys. So my husband encouraged me over that summer. He was like, why can't you switch your major to psychology? Like, why can't you study that? Like, what's stopping you from doing that? So I ended up studying psychology. And when I started studying psychology undergrad, it was really easy for me. I didn't really have to work hard at it. And this is somebody who was terrible at school because I was so interested in it. And then, so I finally got through my undergrad and I applied for graduate school at NYU. I'm all over the place, but rewinding a little bit, when I was going through the college application process in high school, my guidance counselor, this was the early 90s, so things might have been a little different. My guidance counselor looked at me and told me not to bother applying to college because my grades and my SATs weren't good enough. So
gotta love the support of
the schools, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward, I get out of my bachelor's degree and I apply to NYU. That's where my therapist went. And I said, I need to go to NYU because I know their clinical program for social work is incredible. And I got into NYU. So I bring up the guidance counselor thing because if I had listened to her, there's no way I would be sitting where I am. So
100%.
Right. So did that, and eventually after that schooling came very easy to me too. So, go through the schooling, get the license, do all the clinical hours, all of that stuff. But I think the coolest thing about my story, and I'm going to get emotional because it's so cool. This is so freaking cool because this part of my story, and I always throw a disclaimer out there when I tell this is not something that typically happens. So throughout my process with my therapist kind of morphed into through our clinical relationship, and then kind of morphed into a little bit more than that. And that she became, I'd stop therapy every now and then, but I'd come back. But then we'd always stay in touch. But we also had a very healthy relationship. This was not crossing any boundaries. So I always like to be very honest about that. She came to my wedding. She was very supportive of everything that I was doing beyond the therapy room. So when we officially weren't therapist client anymore, and she knew that I was going for grad school and she knew I was going for my clinical hours, we kind of used to joke around, and she was like, we're going to work together. We're going to work together one day. You are like, just the way I see you as a therapist, the way we're going to work together one day. Just wait. So when I started doing private practice, I worked for a very unethical psychiatrist, which is a story for another time. And when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was like, this is my moment to phase out of this person's world. So I kind of phased out of her practice. And at the time, so my previous therapist, she had given me opportunity in the meantime to go in, and she supervised me while I was getting my clinical hours. She taught me how to do a lot of good diagnostic evaluations, which was great. And she called me up when I was on maternity leave with my daughter, and she said, I have a question for you. She's like, so I'm at a point in my career where I've always been an independent practitioner, but right now I want to start taking on associates. I'm getting older. I just need to plan for the future. And the only person I can think of that I want to have as an associate is you. Would you come and work with me?
Wow.
And I was like, awesome. Of course.
Holy crap.
So that's kind of the story. So now our private practice is, she and I have been officially working together for the last 16 years, maybe 15 years in private practice. And again, it's a very unique relationship.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. But I think the coolest thing about it, especially in the beginning, when I was first starting to get into this work and I had to have intense supervision when I was starting to work with clients, she knew me so much better than any random clinical supervisor would know the person they were supervising based on our relationship. And even now, I mean, we're to the point, I'm 46. She's how old is she? She's going to be 60. She has an 18-year-old son. I have a 10-year-old and 7-year-old. She has a house, a vacation house. Our families hang out together. She watched me become a mom.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
It's so awesome. So that was a long-winded story, but that's kind of the emergence of how I've become who I've become. And
No, that that
that's,
is that's absolutely amazing. And like the thing that really stuck out to me, just going all the way back to the beginning, you had that instance where you got raped, and then you had a friend who was like in therapy, and a male
yeah,
in therapy,
yeah,
which,
yeah.
what, this was like in the 90s, like that's,
This was 1990. It was New Year's Eve, 93 into 94. Yeah.
yeah, that's mind blowing. And it's just kind of like amazes me like the universe kind of worked out that way. My a quick question I have for you about it is, because I know like a lot of people are, not a lot of people, or it could be a lot of people, I don't know, because I don't know, I don't personally know this experience, but from what I've understood or from our hearsay, when that kind of thing happens to a woman, it really, there's a lot of like emotional hardships that they go through. And the fact that you had a
Mhm.
friend immediately go, I'm going to take you to therapy with me. I know for me, when like something really traumatic has happened, I shut down and I
Yeah.
didn't do anything. Did you struggle with that, or like were you hesitant to go to therapy with him? Or
No,
did you immediately realize, yeah, this is something I'm going to need to do?
I didn't hesitate. I think he was very open about going to therapy.
Again,
He was
another
like,
rare
I think
soul.
from the so rare, like especially back then, but even like the second I met him, not the second, but like when we are became friends or whatever, he was very open about that and he didn't hide it, which again is so interesting
Yeah.
as we're talking about it, right?
Oh yeah,
Especially
yeah,
back
yeah.
then. And I think even in the back of my mind, based on even before that event, with the struggling of with depression and anxiety and just being in the space that I was in as a teenager, I think in the back of my mind, I wanted to go to therapy, but I didn't know how to ask. I didn't know what to say. Because I didn't want to say it. And then of course there would be a lot of questions that followed it from my parents and I wasn't ready to talk to them about it. So I just kind of, I didn't, but so when he was like, no, you're coming with me, I'm going to pick you up from school and we're going. And fortunately I was 18 at the time. So
You didn't
I
have to
didn't
have
really
the
have to say
parent.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then when I eventually did, because I met with her for the first time with him on, through his therapy, and then I recognized I wanted to do it. So I did have to talk to my parents for the financial and insurance piece. But the way I presented it, and my mom actually, my parents didn't actually know that I was raped until I was in my probably mid-20s.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Again, that so many things about that story just blows my mind, because I remember like me growing up personally, my parents were very like, I guess, anti-therapy, or like they just didn't,
Mhm.
I grew up with that notion that if you're in therapy, you're crazy, or like
Yeah.
something's like really, really wrong, and that you have to see a therapist, and then like people look at you
Yep.
differently. And I grew up in the 90s. I was born in the 80s.
Yep.
I was born in 86, but grew up in the 90s, and that
Okay.
was like the
Yeah.
precedent. I remember like when I was in college, I went through a really low depression, so much so that like the department head at my school that I was at noticed, and he was just like, "Hey, you're coming with me. We're gonna go talk to the therapy. We're gonna go down to the therapy department, and you're gonna talk." And I did, but I
You had
was
no
just like,
choice. They were like, you're
yeah,
talking.
yeah, I really had no choice. And then like I just kind of like, you know, vented, and I was like, all right, cool, I'm done. I'm never doing this again. Even when I went home and like I told my parents about it, the only thing that ever came out of like my mom kind of freaked out and like, oh no,
Okay.
my poor baby boy. But my dad was like, why? Why are you sad? Like, you have everything.
Uh-huh.
You're in a great house. I pay for
Hmm.
everything. You're doing this and that and the other. And like, and the way that my dad grew up was like, my dad, he was in the military. My grandfather was World War II vet.
Okay.
So like very like, we've dealt with shit. You're just supposed to handle it and, deal with it type of thing. So like therapy was just like a, no, no, no. You just handle your problems like a man,
Yep.
quote unquote.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? And so like, so that was like a real big like, all right, I better not say anything else here. And continue battling this alone, because
Right.
for me to even like open up to them about that, it was kind of like maybe me going like, maybe I should get some help. No, I'm thinking about it, but I'm like, I don't know. So like, with your story is so beautiful because you're able to do that. And then the fact that like the therapist that you went to ended up being a good fit, like right away.
Yeah.
Like I know there's a lot of people that I've known who've gone, I tried therapy once and I hated it. I hated that therapist. And it's like, I get it, because the one time I did go to therapy, I didn't like the
Uh-huh.
therapist because I felt like, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I just felt like she wasn't listening to me, and that I was predicting every single thing that she was going to say to me, and I
Right.
was just kind of like, okay, this isn't a good fit. And then it took me a really long time to realize, like, finding a therapist is like finding the right doctor, is like finding a partner, it's
Yeah.
like finding a good friend. You
Yep.
Sometimes you have to go through the bad ones to find the one that fits for you. And it's not necessarily like they're like horrible therapists. It could be
Right.
just that's just not the therapist for you. Like their style doesn't mesh with yours.
Exactly. And I think that's such an important point, especially when people are in this space where they're looking for somebody, right? Or they're maybe feel like they're stuck with a therapist that they don't like, because you always have that choice and that option. And I think sometimes people go to therapy for very different reasons. So if I'm just going to throw an example out there. So let's just say you have somebody who is going to therapy and they have a really hard time with confrontation, or they have a really hard, they're people pleaser, right? Or they have a hard time with disappointing people, and they're sitting in therapy every week, and they go to their appointments every week, and they do what they're supposed to do, but they're not getting anything out of the therapy. But it terrifies them to even confront the therapist or say, this isn't for me, or even to skip an appointment, right? And that's not okay either, because that's not helping them in any way. So to your point, I think if you're seeking a therapist or you're looking to get into therapy, going into it with the mindset that I can interview a therapist, I can ask them questions, I can say, I'm going to try this for even if it's, you just say it to yourself, I'm going to try this for like 2 or 3 times. And if I'm not feeling it, I'm going to not continue it. I don't have to continue it. I need to find somebody that's going to work for me. That's why there's so many therapists out there, because even the most world-renowned best-selling author, whoever therapist, is not going to be a match for everybody. Right. And we have
I
to, yeah.
100% agree. I know, like, I and I think it makes it also hard for people is that like there's like the money aspect behind it. I mean, I know that there
Yep.
are programs that therapists will work on a sliding scale to work with
Yep.
you, and then there's like a bunch of different programs. But that's what I loved about like that's what I love about Change Your Algorithm, where
Yes.
it's these therapists that are donating their time, and you can kind of get a sense of like that everyone has different styles and everyone has
Yep.
different approaches to how they handle it. And then like each therapist that at least I've encountered on through that company has been specializing in like certain aspects. Like some are like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm very trauma based, or like you very anxiety alchemist is your name, so like you're really good at dealing with anxiety and help people, giving tools to help calm their nervous systems down. And you know it's very, and for me, I'm like, it's free, so that's like a beautiful way to do it. And the fact that like
Yes.
people like you are donating your time to get a part of it, that's the thing I wanted to ask you about, is how did you come across Change Your Algorithm?
Oh, that's a great question. So during the pandemic, there's an app called Clubhouse. And are you on it or familiar
I
with
am
it?
not. I've only
Okay.
heard about it within like the past like month or so, and that's because it's
Okay.
from people
Yeah.
from like Change Your Algorithm telling me about it. So
Change
I'm
your
like, oh,
algorithm.
okay.
Yeah. So I think it was like early 2021. I heard about it through a friend, and I was like, I got to get into it. And when I want to do something, I kind of just throw myself into it before I understand how to do it. So I became almost unhealthy obsessed with it. But I recognized that it was a phenomenal tool to connect with people, to meet with people that you otherwise wouldn't. Right. And I think I want to say I was in Clubhouse. It's audio, and you go into these rooms and you just listen to conversation, or you can participate. So somebody who I had connected with through my clubhouse circle, I guess,
Mhm.
was running a room on something connected to mental health. And prior to me just jumping and landing in this room, she had messaged me and said, I have to introduce you to my friend Joel who runs
Yeah.
CYA. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, he's running this. I think at the time she was like, he's running this free platform and he's always looking for therapists. And I think like you have to meet him because you would be great. And people reach out to you probably all the time, or you get people reaching out to you and they're like, I have to connect you. And then like nothing ever comes of it and you just forget about it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happened. So I ended up she was running a room. I ended up going into the room and I was just listening, and Joel was on what they call on the stage. He was talking and I was listening to him. And I looked at you can look at people's profile. I'm looking at his profile. I'm not connecting the dots and remembering that this is the guy that she wanted me to connect with. But I have to say that upon like the first 5 minutes of hearing him speak, and he was responding to a participant who was in there, I was like, I can't believe this guy is not a therapist. He hears
Yeah.
people in a way that I've never heard anyone. And it's an audio app, right? So you really have to listen. But the way that he heard people and responded to people was so, and I know this word gets used a lot, but it was so freaking authentic.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. So I'm like, so I reached out to him, or I think I might have hopped up. I don't remember how I hopped on stage. They asked me to talk a little bit. I talked a little bit about my background. I don't remember if he messaged me first or I messaged him first, but within that room, we connected with each other. And then we connected to the dots that this mutual friend wanted to connect us a couple of weeks ago, but we just kind of organically did it on our own. And then he shared a little bit more about CYA, and I was like, absolutely. So there we go. So it was kind of like, it was meant to happen because this person recognized the two of us should meet, but it organically happened.
Like the universe also said, yeah, you need just meet.
Yeah, you guys just need to connect and meet. So that's how I came about on CYA.
That's awesome. And I did a podcast with Joel, and
Yes.
you're right. When you say authentic, like it's seriously, I don't know. And if he's listening to this, hi Joel. But like he's seriously like, the energy is pure, and
Oh my God.
it's so like, he was so welcoming and he's so understanding. And when I got brought in I got brought in to promote
Yeah.
CYA without having zero idea what it was. A friend of mine, Andres Ramacho, I don't know if you know
Yes,
him.
I know. Oh, he and I are very connected as well now because of CYA.
So I went to college with him, but he was at my school for like maybe like a quarter or two before he
Okay.
transferred out. But like, so our degree's in theater, right? And so he was like the new kid who was coming in, and he was already getting talked about like, this new hotshot kid is transferring in, he's super talented and all these things. And some people's egos took a hit with that, and so they kind of put up a wall
Uh-huh.
against him. And I went, what's up, dude? Like, what's going on? And I
Mhm.
just got to know him, and like, he's such a beautiful soul. And so he reached
He
out to me
is.
and was all like, hey man, like, I work with this company, um do you mind making a video about it? And I went like, yeah. And then he told me about it, and I went, so I was like, okay, I'm making sure I'm connecting all the dots. And then I went, hold on, it's free? And he's like,
Right. That's
yeah.
what people always say.
Yeah. And I was like, he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, then 1,000,000%. Of course, I'm gonna make videos and stuff about this and like try to tell people about it. And then I went, and also my ass is gonna jump into a class like ASAP, because
Yeah.
I knew I needed therapy. And I was, so my therapy stories are like, I went to a therapist, I didn't like it. And then this was like around the time I
Right.
was taking care of my mom.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I kind of just gave up after that, because like the mindset is like, all right, screw it. I tried, it didn't work. It's not meant for me. Therapy's not meant for me. And then like sometime last year, like a year ago, um, a friend of mine told me about like a program that where people like will go on sliding scales or whatever, and then
Okay.
it costs like $60 to sign up.
Okay.
And then they'll give you like a list of therapists who are on their program, and like they'll go from anywhere from like $20 to $80 per session instead.
Okay.
And then the one therapist that I reached out to never got back to me. And then so
Oh, that happened.
that made me again
Right. You're
go,
like, this is the second experience, not a
like,
good
not
one.
again.
So,
And so,
right.
and I was like, I already struggle enough for money, and the fact that I just lost $60, and then like,
Yeah.
I'm a people pleaser, so I didn't want to be confrontational and go back and be like, can I have my money back? And I said,
Right.
screw it, I
Right.
lost the $60. And then, I got told about CYA, and I was like, all right, I'll try it out. And then like first class, boom. And I went, okay, it clicked. Everything, it was just kind of like the
Yeah.
universe
Yeah.
went, there it is. And it was just kind of like
Yep.
that gut feeling that, you have like where, it's telling you like, no, just keep, this is the
Yep.
thing for you. Where
Yep.
I've had many instances in my life where I did things and I was like, this doesn't feel right. I don't know if I should do this, but I tried doing it anyways because I was trying to people please other people,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it just never panned out.
And your gut always is right. Right. Your gut usually
Yeah,
steers you in the right direction.
it took me the longest time to figure that out because like it was just kind of like I felt like I was like trying to so I had this discussion with my brother not that long ago where I was like, he was asking me about like what I'm doing, and he's just making sure that like I'm all right, because he's like, I've noticed that you just kind of do whatever you want to do now. And like when people ask like, hey, I have a job for you, like if you want to work here and have some stable hours, if you want to do or like this, that, or the other, right? And he's like, but you never take it. Why don't you ever take those opportunities? And I go, one, I don't want to feel like a burden to anybody, but two, like this is the first time I feel like I'm on a path that I can be proud of, because I growing up and doing everything, I've always tried to make other people proud of me. So like
Yeah.
I tried making my dad proud of me. Even after, so like I did, I was pursuing an acting career and trying to make my dad very
Right.
proud of me. And then to start getting with some income, I became a personal trainer and be like, oh, that'll
Okay.
be something that like I like fitness. My dad would be proud of me that I'm a personal trainer, has like a high status, I guess you can say.
Right.
And he wanted to be my client and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, like yeah, this will be good. And then like then he died shortly after that, and then after he
Mhm.
died, I realized how much I hated that job, like how much I
The
hated
personal
it.
trainer.
I hated being a personal trainer. It was just because
Okay.
like fitness for me is a me thing, like that's what I
Okay,
do.
because
And
I was going to say some people might be really taken aback by that based on your passion for fitness and your
oh
passion for
yeah,
lifting.
I it so lifting for me is just, it's a me thing. And
Yeah.
what I was struggling when I had clients and everything like that is they didn't have the same drive or want that I had when I was going in learning
Oh,
fitness
yeah.
and going into a weight loss journey. And it's like I can't force that upon them. And I didn't like, and again, I'm not very confrontational. So like when they're telling me, why am I not losing weight? And I can't be like, well, maybe if you stop going out and eating every freaking night and
Right.
maybe worked out
Right. And you
outside of
came here
seeing me,
more. Right.
like,
Right.
yeah, then maybe you'd
Right.
see better results. And it's like, and I hated that aspect of like, the gym going like, hey, you need to re-up these clients. Hey, you should try selling to these people, doing this, that, or the other. I'm very
Uh-huh.
like, if you want to do it, you're going to do it.
Right. Right.
Like,
I'm not going to
you
force
know,
you to do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I grew up this giant fat kid, and I got told a million times by doctors when like, hey, you're fat, right? You should probably lose some weight, right? And of course I did like diets here and there because I knew I
Right.
should, but it wasn't until
Right.
I went, no, like fuck it, I'm going. And granted, I developed like a bad eating disorder and all that stuff, and I'm
Oh,
learning to like accept my body for what it is now versus what it
good.
was
That's
then.
hard.
It's very
Yeah.
hard. But then so I end up quitting that job, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. I was like, I'll work at Disneyland, right? Because like
That's cool.
our family has a ties to Disney. I love Disneyland. Like my grandparents knew Walt Disney. Like I was like, perfect. I'll work my way up in the
Are you
company.
serious? That's very cool.
Yeah. So my
Your
grandfather,
grandparents knew Walt Disney?
well, in a sense, so my grandfather painted the studios originally, and then
Oh my goodness.
he also painted Walt's house.
Wow, that's so cool.
So yeah, so that was like one of like the many jobs. And then like So like my parents used to get into Disneyland for free. Like they would walk up to the gate, Walt's secretary would come downstairs, grab them, go back up and give them a book of like tickets and
Oh
like
my
go have fun.
gosh.
That's what, like, that was the day when like you had to like rip off tickets and have like an
Right.
A B C D E ticket ride type of thing. Um
Yep.
so that's how they would get in. And then so my thought was like, okay, cool, I'll work there, I'll work up in the company as fast as humanly possible. That's gonna make dad proud. He was gone, but I was still
Yeah.
trying to make
But
him
you
proud
still
of me.
wanted to make him proud. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, best job I've ever had, like funnest job I've ever had. The pay was but I had a lot of fun doing it. But then my mom got sick, and
Right.
then I, I owe my parents everything, so I quit to take care of her. And again, that was like another like, let's make dad proud
Right.
type of thing.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And like I know that he would have been proud of like almost anything that I did, but it was still like I had a lot of traumas and stuff that I was dealing with him. And then so I ended up, so after my mom died, it took me like a year to like be able to leave my house. Like I couldn't, I had like some severe PTSD after she died.
Okay.
And then when I finally was able to get back out into the real world, again, it was, what job can I get that will make both mom and dad proud of me?
Yeah.
And then all those avenues I was going down never panned out. And it was just kind of like life, just like the universe, just like slapping me in the face, going like, no,
Right. Like
no,
this, there's a
don't,
reason why these aren't working
don't.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, so now I'm just like, all right, I need to do something that is going to make me proud of me. And that's where, even though like TikTok was by accident, how it happened,
I'm
but
so curious about that too, because it's
I
such a
can
big
definitely,
deal.
yeah. So like that happened. And then, the fact that it kept growing, I was like, okay, maybe this is the thing that I need to do. And like, this is where this podcast is stemming from. Of
Yeah.
my goal in life was to always put a smile on people's faces, make them feel better, keep them entertained, do whatever I can to help.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I was pursuing acting. I can entertain the world. Or
Hmm.
that's, Disneyland, I can put a bunch of smiles on people's faces and everything like that. Like that was like, okay, what avenue can I do where I can still help people? And
Right.
like this has become like the latest one, and it's the hardest one because like I'm not getting paid really for anything for it, but
Right.
it's the one that I'm getting like the most satisfaction out of, even though it's like the most stressful thing I've done. One of the most
There's
stressful
so
things I've done.
right, because there's so many sacrifices that come, right, when you're doing these kind what you're doing, whether it's a financial sacrifice, right, whether it's the stress of, oh my gosh, like I have to do this and this, and there's so many pieces that you have to maneuver to do what you do.
Yeah. It's always like the financial stress of like, okay, I need to make sure I'm able to pay my mortgage and pay my bills. And then like, yeah, even just yesterday, I have a part on my pool. I live in the house that I grew up in, and I have a
Okay.
part in the pool that broke, and I need to get a bunch of chlorine. And with the chlorine shortage, prices of
Oh
chlorine
yeah.
went through the roof. So I dropped like $400+ on chlorine,
Wow.
and another like 120 on a part that I'm grateful that I was told to me about. I was like, oh, if you probably replace this, it'll probably fix your thing, and you don't have to hire somebody to fix it.
Okay.
So, but the part alone is expensive. But I'm like, well, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm still saving money because I'm not dropping like
You're
another
not paying
200.
someone to do right.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that when I get the part A, it's the right one, and then two, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
But like it's that kind of time, or like I've sacrificed a lot of time just in general. I mean, like I work 6 days a week, but even with doing content creating it, that's like a whole other full-time
That's like
job
a
in
full-time,
and of
it's a
itself.
100% a full-time job. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so it's just like it's sacrificing a lot of that time. And then like even like for me, like I'm super vulnerable on that platform on here.
Yes.
Like it,
Yes.
that takes its toll. And it's either like having people relating to me by sharing their traumas with me, or like people telling me like, how I can fix it type of thing, even if that's not what I'm looking for. um
Right. So you're a lot of advice giving. You're seeing a
Yeah,
lot of it
yeah.
there.
So I just get a lot of stuff, and then like sometimes I have to like, remind
Mm-hmm.
myself, hey, you need to like pull back and
Mm-hmm.
learn to
Mm-hmm.
relax. And that's where I'm trying to find my balance. Like I went from
Okay.
posting 3 times a day to, which is like a ton of content to
That's
try
a
to
lot
come
of
up with
content.
daily. Like I know people who would like to take like a day, film a bunch of content, and then
Yep.
sporadically do it.
Yep. They batch it. Yeah.
I can't do that. I'm very on the spot, in the moment type of person when I come up with something. And then so I went from like 3 times a day, and that stressed me out. And then like when I finally starting posting about like mental health, and that's when like it just randomly took off.
Yeah.
And then I've
Yeah.
had to learn to like pull that back to, I need to do maybe once a day. And then like for a long time I was going live every single night. I'm like, I can only go live if if I have the mental capacity to do so.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So that was very organic too.
Yeah,
You're just being who you're. And I think that's one of the things that is so incredible about what you're putting out there is you're being you. You're being who you are. You're not, at least from what I could see, you're not censoring yourself. You're not, I like the on the spot as opposed to the batched content too, because I think that there's a time and a space for everything, right? There's batch
yeah.
content that I think to some extent, like there's a place for batch content, especially when you have a plan of what you're going to put out. But I think the authenticity, as we talked about earlier, there's definitely, I don't care what anyone says, you can feel the authenticity
Oh,
on those platforms.
well, thank you. I appreciate you for saying that. I'll say this, it's scary as fuck. It's scary because when I first started doing it, I got a lot of hate from it. And it was just like, it was just weird. And then it took me a long time to realize, okay, that's people projecting their insecurities onto me. Like that's not a me thing.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
them seeing a man, as especially as big as of a man that I am, uh see that. And to me it just like went like, no, we're not supposed to see this type of thing. And like a
Yeah.
lot of the times it was like dudes just going like, dude, you're fat, just go to the gym and you'll be fine. And I'm like, I'm stronger than you, bro. Like
Correct. You're
there's
putting
like a
yourself out there. Yeah.
there, no, not even that, just like, dude, I can go into the gym with you right now and
Oh,
probably
meaning like
outlift you.
we can go
I
head
could
to head and you're done.
I could probably
Physically,
physically
yeah.
outlift you. Now there are, trust me when I say this, there are a bajillion people who are a lot stronger than I am, physically a lot stronger than I am. But it took me a really long time to stop taking that as like an ego hit of like
Yep.
just go to the gym or whatever, and realize like, okay, there's something more here that you're dealing with.
Yes.
And while you may have the gym as an outlet, because these are mostly dudes who go to the gym, like you may have the gym as your outlet, you need more. And that's kind of what I discovered, that like the gym was always like I always said it's my therapy, and now I say it's my therapy outside of therapy. It's a great way to
Love
get the
that.
release that you need, but
Yep.
it doesn't it doesn't solve everything.
It doesn't. And what are they? I've seen something, and I think it's so true that I'm gonna botch the phrase, but I think it's you could be the healthiest eater, that you could go to the gym, you could exercise, you could have like an incredible physique, but if you're not working on this and the stuff that's going on in here inside of you, you're not really, are you really that healthy? Right.
Yeah, and like that type of stuff, like it can easily lead to, like sometimes like you see like the most physically fit people like have like a brain aneurysm, or like they just snap, or they
Mm-hmm.
have a heart attack or something. And it's like, it goes, how are you managing your stress? Yes, exercise is like
Oh
chef's
yeah,
kiss
that's a
primo.
fantastic way. Yeah.
But there's like so many like other things out there, and like therapy is like one of the best ones, at least for me, that I've discovered, that has been like really changing my life. And the biggest thing that it's taught me is I need to be a lot kinder to myself. And even though like I'll still have my days where I'm a prick to myself,
Sure.
I'm a lot better at catching those thoughts, and like I'll allow them to be there, but I'll just be like, okay, you're being a dick
Mhm.
to yourself right there. Like you don't
Mhm.
really need to do that, but okay,
Yeah.
like all right.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great point, because when when you're intentionally making changes, there are going to be moments when you're being a dick to yourself. There's going to be moments where you have those setbacks. And I think a lot of times what confuses people when they are making progress and they are making significant changes intentionally, that when those things come up, when I'm being a dick to myself or when I'm going back to old habits, it doesn't erase all of the progress that you've made. And the key to it, you said it before, Anjay, is how quickly am I responding or recovering to these thoughts or to the fact that I'm talking to myself and I'm being a dick to myself? How quickly am I self-correcting, or am I recognizing it, or am I aware of what's happening? Because that's how you know. That's how you can measure the progress too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a question for you is, you're a therapist, and I'm sure that you have people who are around you who look at you like, oh, you have things figured out, you have the answers, like you're probably fine. But you know what I mean? Like they kind of like look up to you like, oh,
Yeah.
Suzanne, she knows everything. She's a therapist. Of course she already knows. You know what I mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you still have your rough moments and your rough
Oh
days.
my
And
God, more than moments. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because I think the thing to keep in mind is, at the core, we're all humans. I'm a human being. If you live anywhere near my neighborhood, you're going to hear me screaming bloody murder at my kids. You're going to hear me, like, when you see me in the school drop off line, and the kids are bickering with each other, I'm going to be reacting to my kids. But, I'm a human, and I think just because I'm a therapist and I know a lot about, obviously, the human psyche and how to handle things and how to deal with things. I'm also a constant work in progress too. And I take steps back, and sometimes I don't always practice what I preach because I'm a human being. And I'm aware of it. I'm very aware of it. So we're all constantly working on ourselves, or should be working on ourselves.
see, I always feel like, if I'm having somebody on who's like a professional like you, or even when I had Joel on, it was just kind of like, I feel like that's a point that kind of needs to be made, that just because somebody looks like they have their stuff together, and especially with like the age of social media that we're in, where like you see all these people going like, look at what I'm doing now, or but that's like the only thing that they're posting, and so it just looks like they have like their stuff together. And
Yeah.
you know it's like, no, like it's human to be sad, it's human to struggle. It's like,
Yep.
no one's really like no one's, I guess, like safe from it. Like no one's safe from the little monsters in our heads that are telling us to be pricks to ourselves or whatever.
Yeah.
And especially like, when you go through like traumas and stuff, like that stuff lives in
Hmm.
your body. Like it's not,
Hmm.
it doesn't, as much as you want to like pack its bags and tell it to say bye and like have it never return, it just kind of still has its ways of still showing up.
It does, absolutely. And one of the things, in terms of like being human and even the trauma piece, one of the things that, um when we all go through shit, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's trauma, whether it's struggling with depression or anxiety or loss or grief or whatever it is that we go through, I think all of us have gone through some really significantly difficult times in our lives, and get to a point where we go through those things when we kind of have those questions, or like, why does this always happen to me, or this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And I think on the other side of that, and when I first started thinking in these terms and saying this, I felt, I guess so, I really did judge myself, and I was like, this is really fucked up of me to say. But it's important of part of this process. So, that whole philosophy of, oh, everything happens for a reason and there's a reason for everything. And you look at the world and you're like, well, this person has a terminal illness. Why does that happen for a reason? But I think what I want to say to that, just speaking from what I've gone through personally, is if 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 I was not, if that assault did not happen to me on New Year's Eve in 1993 into 94, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what direction my life would have taken. If
Yeah.
that didn't
No,
happen to me,
100%.
I might not have met my, you know what I mean? Like that, the course of events. So do I look back on it and say, you know, this again, like this is just my sense of humor. Let me find, I don't even know his name anymore. I blocked it, but let me find the person who did that to me so I can thank them. Like I'm not about to do that. That's not right.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
twisted
Yeah.
humor. I'm not, that's not what I'm talking about. But in a sense, it's having viewing it through a different lens. I guess that's the best way to put it, right? Viewing it through a different lens of, I could say, this really awful thing happened to me, or as crazy as it sounds, this awful thing happened for me to be able to become
Yeah.
who I am right now, right? And I
Yeah.
think when we endure these shitty, difficult things that we endure, we're not going to be able to see it through that lens right away. But I think that at some point, to be able to look back and see things through that lens is, I think that's significant.
I think that's also part of like your self-love journey with that, right? Like, you start to realize how great of a person you are currently, and it's kind of like, well, everything that has happened to me in life has led me up to this point. And I'm sure I'll let you speak on this because you'll have way better wisdom on it than I would. But I think a lot of people, when they go through like traumas and whatnot, a lot of that blame gets put on, they put that blame on themselves. Like, how could I let this happen?
Yeah.
And like, oh, I guess I deserve this. But but the reality is like, yeah, it happened. Yeah, it sucks, but that doesn't mean you're a horrible person.
That's right. We connect our worth, right, to those situations that we probably didn't have 100% of control over, no matter what we did, or no matter how much we go back in our head and say, we replay the events, right? If I did this, or if I didn't do this, or if I made this choice, or if I didn't do this, and you could do that to death, right? But it's not going to change what happened. But
Yeah.
you placing your value on what happened to you is, we want to step away from that as far as we can.
Yeah. I know for me, it's been, I look back at the events that have happened to me, and
Yeah.
me personally, I rationalize it. So like
Okay.
my father dove deep into the bottle, especially after he retired. And it wasn't until
Mhm.
after he died where I found out like he had to do some stuff that I was like, wow, that's really traumatic. And he never talked about it. Like he never said
Was
any.
was some of this connected to his time in the service?
No, this was actually
Oh,
so I guess I'll share it. Uh I just I struggle because like I don't ever want him to come off in a bad light, even though like a lot of my insecurities do stem from him. But
yeah.
I forgive it because like for me, like I understand. So my grandfather, um, he had he died when I was like maybe 8 years old. So I don't really have like much of a recollection of him. But from what I know is that he had several strokes. Like when my parents found out about the possibility of adopting me, he was in the hospital because he just had a stroke. And so,
Oh,
like,
wow.
imagine like 6, 7, 8 years after that, still having strokes, as
Yeah.
small or minor as they might have been, it's still dealing with that process. And eventually
Yeah.
he had like a massive one. And he was in a lot of pain. And my grandmother told my dad to tell the doctor to pump him full of morphine until he goes, so he won't be in pain anymore.
Okay.
And so essentially, he was told, go tell the doctor to kill your dad. And I'm like,
Wow.
fuck, that's heavy. And it was like,
That's a heavy thing to do and say and hold, and
and it was right around like his birthday, my dad's birthday. It was right around my dad's
oh,
birthday.
wow. Okay.
Flash forward many years later, I'm like 20, 21 at the time. Grandmother, same thing. She had strokes. She's been living with us, and she had like little minor strokes here and there. And then She had a massive one. And then he ended up having to do the same thing for her. And again,
Wow.
right around his birthday. And he's never talked
Wow.
about it. And he didn't have the ability to go to work and keep himself distracted because he was already retired. So he was sitting with it. And
Yeah.
then I was noticing like his drinking and his smoking and I mean, my dad had like the worst health in the world, so he shouldn't have been drinking, smoking, and eating like crap regardless.
Right.
But his smoking got more and more and more, and his drinking got like he'd wake up like at 5 a.m. and start, and then he'd pass out a good chunk during the day, wake back up and keep going. And then like my brother at the time has moved out of the house, so like any kind of like anger or frustration or whatever would got taken out on me, not physically but verbally. Like
Right. Right.
he essentially was like, well, like, why aren't you your brother, type of thing, because my brother had the wife, the kids, the job, all that
He
stuff.
had the whatever the ideal was in anybody's eyes. That's what your brother had.
Exactly, he had this looks good to everybody else, me, I'm this struggling actor. uh
Yeah.
Even though like I was doing it because my dad loved to watch me perform and I wanted to
Yeah.
make him happy and proud and all those types of things. um so that just kept getting like taken out on me. And but I didn't find out about the stuff that he did until after he died. And like I went, oh shit,
Yeah.
that makes so much to me, it makes so much sense. I'm like,
Right.
I get it. Like that would be hard on anybody. And I got mad at him because I was like, dude, what the fuck? Why couldn't you say something? Just say something.
Right.
Like I
Right.
would have been like so like understanding. And then like, one thing that my dad told me, it was like right after my grandma died, and we were all just kind of sitting in the living room, really sad. And he said something, and then I cracked a joke and I made him laugh. And he just
Okay.
looked at me and he was like, you just know how to like bring up a room where like, you know how to make people
Oh.
smile and laugh. And I was like, well, thanks, Dad. Like he was proud of me for the things that I did.
Yeah.
And he like, but like it was just a lot of when he was not sober is when it was just really
Mhm.
bad. And
Right.
there wasn't a lot of times towards the end where he wasn't sober. And then like, so like I had to deal with a lot of traumas and issues from that when he died, because like the last
Right.
words I ever said to my father were, I'm disappointed in you. And that was to explain that backstory was, um so I had a tummy tuck surgery to remove excess skin from all the weight I lost.
Okay.
And I was at the time training my father, and he was doing good, he was eating better,
Okay.
he was drinking less, he was doing all these great things. And then he ended up, when I was started healing, or like, I had to take time off, of course. And then so he
Sure.
was just boom, started smoking more, started drinking more, started
Oh,
eating
so when
worse.
he wasn't working out with you, or you weren't able to help
He
him
wasn't on
in that
top of
sense.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like essentially taking care of me. Um, and then like, one night after eating really shitty food and smoking and all that stuff, he woke up having trouble breathing, which, we were used to. Like that's happened to him many times
Okay.
before. And so like him going to the emergency room was like, me waking up and getting breakfast in the morning. Like it was just something
That
that
was
we were
not an
used to.
unusual thing.
It was
Right.
very not unusual.
Okay.
And then so when he got released later that morning, or yeah, he came home. And then my mom and I were talking, and we were arguing because I was like, you got to talk to him, you got to say something to him, like.
Right.
And she was just getting frustrated, like, what do you want me to say, like what? And we were arguing, and then my dad comes out and he goes, what are you guys yelling about? And I said, you. I was like, I'm disappointed in you. And instead of getting like, I knew it hit him, because instead of getting like really defensive or anything like that, he just kind of like shut down and went, oh.
Okay.
And then he walked away, got dressed, went to go get his meds that he got prescribed, and he collapsed and died in the parking lot.
Oh my goodness. Like almost immediately after that.
Like 20 minutes after.
Wow.
He immediately just got dressed and went to go run his errand. And then
Wow.
I had a doctor's appointment with my surgeon later that day. And then a firefighter came to our house, knocked on the door, told my mom, "Hey, you better come with us. Like, we felt like your husband's not doing good." And they won't ever say like he's dead, like, and
Right.
they don't want to do anything like that over the phone or anything like that. Like,
Right.
even, and I had a friend take me to my doctor's office, and I remember like my mom called me, and I answered the phone, and then as the doctor's walking in, she goes like, "Hey, you need to get down here. Your dad's gonna die."
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
goodness.
what the hell? So yeah, so it was just kind of like,
Wow.
I had to learn to battle with that thought for many, many years.
And the
And
guilt and the,
yeah, and it took me a long time to
yep.
forgive myself, because it's like, I know he knew that it was coming from a place of love. That wasn't coming from like a place of hate or anything like that.
Yeah. And how do
And
you know that he knew that?
just because he didn't fight back
The way that he responded, right?
the way he responded. Yeah. And it was just
Yeah.
one of those like, and it wasn't until probably like, I don't know, like a month ago, where I was in a CYA class, and I brought this up because I was like really missing it. I was really battling it. And it was with Dr. Wendy, and she goes, "Anjay, did you have any idea that was going to be the last thing you would ever say to your father?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"No." And she was like, "If you knew that that was going to be the last thing that you were ever going to say to him, would you?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "You need to kind of forgive yourself for that, because like, that's, you had
Yeah.
no idea, and like, you
Right.
can't blame yourself if you didn't know." And I went,
Yeah.
"Oh, all
Yeah. The
right,
dots were
cool."
connected there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
But
it's just
that's
kind of like,
true.
yeah, that's like,
Yeah.
again, like, this is why I always talk about like, everyone should join CYA and like come in,
Yes.
because like it's free access
It's
to a
free
therapist.
access. Yeah.
And for
And
me,
even, yeah. Good.
I was gonna say, for me, it's I'm like, I take full advantage of that. So like, if you're in your classes, I'm always like, "Hey, I got something I need to bring up," or like in
Yes.
that
I
class,
love
"Hey,
when
I
you
have
talk in our
something."
class. Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
thank you, because I always feel like I over talk, I overshare, and things along those lines. But I'm like, I got to take advantage of this while I can, until like the
Absolutely.
one day where hopefully one day I can afford to have like one-on-one therapy. But for the
Yeah.
meantime, it's such a great community, and it's like, again, free
Yeah.
access.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things to also remember is when you, even if you feel like, am I oversharing? Am I saying too much? Am I, you're, you have the right to do that in those classes. But not only that, but you're also setting the tone, because there might be somebody or a lot of somebodies in that class who want to say something but are reluctant. So you never know if what you're going to say is going to give somebody some kind of reassurance or validation or a similar circumstance, or even give them the courage to raise their hand and speak.
That is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast, is just because like, I was noticing in those classes that when I did, there'd be a lot of like, "Oh yeah, me too," or boom, like the chat really started to come up and more people were starting to share.
Yes.
And now, it doesn't happen like every class. I don't want this to sound like I'm bragging or anything like that, but it really
No.
made me spark the idea of like, what if I did a podcast where I was just being my authentic self, and I bring people on and we have discussions, we talk about the past, we talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And who knows, like, if that discussion can help somebody, if just hearing it or seeing it, they just go, "Oh, I'm not alone in this."
Right.
And like, if this person is still fighting and still surviving, and they're still continuing down their journey, maybe I can too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if that's what you hit for at least one person, and I know it's a lot more than just one person, that is incredible.
That's really all I can hope for. And again, like, that's the point of doing stuff like this. And again, I am so grateful that you're coming on and you're hanging out with me and having these types of discussions, because like, there's going to be people who have had similar stories to what happened with you. And I
Yep.
thank you so much for sharing that, because
Of course.
that's a lot. And I know that, someone can be like, "Oh, well, she went through that." Because I know, you hear stories of like women who've had that situation happen to them, and they immediately start struggling with like their body and like their self-worth. And
Mhm.
you know, to be treated so inhumanely.
Yeah.
And it becomes like really difficult to find that self-love. And I guess going back to that and going back into that like self-love journey, how have you been able to like try to maintain that for yourself and start building that back up for yourself? Because I
Mhm.
can't imagine what you felt immediately after that situation.
Right.
And then like to be able to do that, and then you know, a lot of your content is like building people up as well and like really helping people and helping others. So to be able to go from like that dark of a space to do that,
Mhm.
I know that it takes a lot of self-love to be able to give love to other people like that.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that you know, with the caveat of it's the years and years and years and years, and you know, thinking back, it was probably more than years and years. It's probably like decades worth of work, decades worth of shit storms, right? It's a constant work in progress. You know, I think that, do I still struggle with that stuff, with the self-worth and the yes, I do. Even as a therapist, even as somebody who, you know, does this professionally. But I want to say that the way I don't, it's a hard question to answer. The way in which I do it is, I think, finding the gratitude in moments. And I think for
Mm,
so long, no matter what it was, like just being, I was always like a very introverted person. I still am. Um, I don't like to hang out with a lot of people. I don't like big
yeah,
crowds. I don't like big parties. Like I don't like, right. I don't like that stuff.
yeah,
Um, but I think with that said, I was always extremely quiet and withdrawn because I didn't know. I was afraid. I was afraid. I was afraid of
yeah,
rejection. I was afraid of not being accepted. I was afraid of all of those things. And to be totally honest, it probably took me until my 40s to get to a point where, yes, I still struggle with that to a point, but I'm more likely to say fuck it and focus on what I know is best for me. To say no to things that I don't want
yeah.
to do, to not have to please people all the time. That's something that I've stepped into in my 40s. It took me a long time to get there, but you know, I think we're human beings, and for me, it's constantly just checking in with myself and having, when I have those moments where I lose my shit, whether it's with myself, whether it's with my kids, whether it's, you know, being able to have conversations with them and say, mom lost her shit. It's not okay that I chose to do that. I was having an emotional reaction and my emotions were strong, but it was not okay for me to choose to yell or to say those words. I could have handled it differently. You know, so
Yeah.
I think being aware of my actions and how they in turn affect me and how they in turn affect other people, if that makes sense.
Oh
I
no,
think awareness
100%.
is self-awareness, I think, is a huge piece of it. I think a lot of us are self-aware, um, whether we're open about it or not. I think we're more self-aware than we might give ourselves credit for, but it's what we do with that self-awareness is what makes the difference. We can be self-aware and like bury it and not do
Yeah,
anything about it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
hide it and mask it. And on the outside, it looks all great, but it's not. But I think choosing what I can do with that self-awareness and how I can move through it
No, that's
is,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's very like it's baby steps. Like a lot of, you know, I know, you know, like on my page, I'll post something like really positive and people will think like, oh, this guy is all about like he loves and all this stuff. Like, I don't get, I can't never tell myself that I'm great. I can't tell what I'm doing is enough. I can't tell myself all these things. How are you able to do that? And I was like, it's
Right.
taken me a lot of struggle and baby steps just to do it.
Yeah.
And for me, my biggest clicking point was I need to start talking to myself like how I talk to other people.
100.
Like I would
Yes.
like
Yes.
the things that I would say to myself, like the negative voice that I would say to myself, I would never say that to anybody else. Like, no, like why? And then it turned in, I had the self-realization of like, if I'm not willing to say that to somebody else, do I why do I feel like I deserve to say that to me? And it's like, no, like you don't. Now,
Yeah.
granted, I still do. Like this past
Yeah.
weekend, like I got into like a super dark headspace and I had no idea where it was coming from. And well, actually I do. It stemmed from a dream I had earlier in the week and it just kind of stuck with me. It was like one of those, I don't know if you ever had like a
Yeah.
dream where it was so bad that it just you have so many details vividly remembering from
Oh
that
yeah,
dream,
I've
and then it
100%. Yeah.
just sticks with you.
It
And it was
sticks, it
just,
stays. Yeah.
yeah, so for me it was like a dream where like I saved a bunch of people, and like from like a dude who was wielding a knife,
Wow.
and like I was just like, all right, cool, like I'm gonna be there for you people, I got you. And then I did it, and then like I started crying because I was like such like a huge like crazy adrenaline rush and all that type of stuff, and nobody said anything to me. Nobody approached me, no one said thank you, no one did
Even
anything.
the people that you saved, nobody
Yeah,
said, nobody expressed
no one
anything.
did anything. And for me it took me like to a place of like, wow, I'm there for so many people and no one is there for me, especially when I'm like visibly
Yeah.
struggling.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
took I woke up from that dream, and then it took me like an hour to like, I kept thinking about it, and then that's how I interpreted it of as that. And then it
Okay.
just kind of like stuck with me through like the rest of the week. And then
Hmm.
like Saturday, it just took me like down like a really dark path. And it wasn't
Okay.
until like a friend hit me up. I was like, I need to shut off from everybody. I need to put my phone down. I need to like, I stopped
Yep.
working because I was like, I can't,
Good.
I
Okay.
don't
You
have
knew
the
what you
mental
needed to do in
capacity.
that moment. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So like I was like, I did that. And then my friend hit me up and he was all like, hey, we planned to, he hit me up earlier in the week to plan to get together for Sunday. And then he was like, hey man, we're gonna get together here on Sunday. It's gonna be a real small group of people, it's gonna be a couple people, and we'll probably around like this time. And I was like, I responded and I went, okay, this is really hard for me to admit because I admittedly have like a Superman complex where I'm willing to take on everybody's stuff, but never
Yep.
share mine. And
You
so I
often
just
talk
went,
about that. Hmm.
yeah. So like I go, this is really hard for me in a minute, but I'm in a really, really, really dark headspace right now. So if I don't come tomorrow, you know why. And then he responded back with like, he was like, well, it's only going to be a couple of people if that makes you feel better. And I was like,
He
no,
didn't get, yeah.
no, no. I was just like, in my head, I'm like, I don't give a fuck that you're having people over. I don't care. Like
Right.
that's how
Right.
dark of a head.
Right.
Like I just don't care. And I was like, dude, I have
Right.
to make it to tomorrow first. And then he goes,
Yeah.
oh shit. Like I'm sure in his head he went, oh shit. And then he's like, hey, can I call you? And then like he called me and then we talked, and
Okay.
we mostly talked about like nothing. It was like a Seinfeld episode where we were just,
Okay.
it's just like an episode about nothing. But he's really good about doing that. And then like I eventually just went like that. And he's like, yeah, dude, no, I'm sorry. I'm really bad at picking up like those types of social cues type of
Okay.
things. And he's like, I'm not really good at that. But like, we talked for like a long time. And I was like, all right, cool. And like the next day I felt a lot better. But I was also like consciously like that day just going, all right, you just got to get to tomorrow. That's always been like my mantra of
Yes.
just get to tomorrow, because you don't know
Yep.
how you're going to feel tomorrow. And I know a lot of
Right.
people, who struggle, they tell me these things like, well, I've been feeling this way for months or years or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I deal with that too. My tomorrow may not be tomorrow. My tomorrow might be next week. It might be next year. It might be something.
Right.
My
Right.
goal is
Right.
still get to tomorrow, because
Tomorrow. Yep.
I don't know how
Yeah.
I'm going to feel in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
space.
Setting those small goals
Yeah. So it's just kind of
and
like
not
one of the,
expecting too much. Yeah.
and I'm really, yeah, and I'm really trying to, and again, like through, your classes and the other CYA classes, it's been like, learning to, if I don't get something done, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just really learning to be a lot kinder to myself, and like, you know, realizing the the circumstances that I'm in, and like they can be really difficult, and
Hmm.
that it's okay, and that I don't need to be quote unquote normal,
Right.
like how everyone else would want it to be. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
it doesn't have to look this way. This is what it looks like for me, and that is what makes it okay.
That's right. Because it's your stuff. It's not anybody else's. And what a I think a proud moment for you is that you were able to say what you said to your friend and clarify what you said to your friend and have your
Oh
friend
yeah.
be open to your friend reaching out to you. Because I know that's something that you often put out there. You say, I'm this guy for everybody else, but when it comes to my own shit, like that's a struggle for me to talk about. It's a struggle for me to let people in. It's a struggle for me to say what's really going on for all the reasons, that you
Yeah.
share. And
I always say it's easier for me to put out my stuff into the void of the internet
oh
than it
yeah,
is
yeah,
for me
right. It's safer.
to talk to. Yeah, in a sense it is, because it's like if other people give me bad feedback, I'm like, I don't care. I just did this to vent. But if I get
Yep.
positive feedback, it lets me know like, oh, this isn't just a me thing. Like this isn't just
Right.
me dealing with this type of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me to like, I can open up to my friends about it after the fact. So it'd be
Not while
like,
you're in it.
well, not while I'm in it. So like I have friends like at the gym where like, they'd be like, dude, like seriously, reach out. Like you can talk, no judgment, whatever. And then I had like a really bad day one time and I was kind of like short with one of them. And then it wasn't until like the next week where I went, hey, remember that day I was really short with you? Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to stay alive that day. And like I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. My brain was just in a
Yeah.
really deep fog. And they go, oh, okay. Like I hear you, but like always know like I'm here to talk. I'm like, I know. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing for me to do because again, it stems back to my dad shutting me down when I tried to speak up
Mm-hmm.
about something that's going on with me.
Yeah.
Uh and so it's like, oh, I don't want to burn it. And like even like my friend who reached out, he's a very busy man and like his husband is also an extremely busy man. I never want to like reach out and be like, hey, can we hang? Or anything like that, because I'm like, oh, you guys work so freaking hard and you guys need your downtime. And like, I don't want to, and you have all these other friends that you're getting together with and doing stuff with, or you're taking care of your family or this, that, or the other. And instead of maybe just going like, hey, are you free to catch up anytime soon or whatever, and like set like a plan or a date, I just
Yeah.
go, oh, I better not reach out at all and not say anything at all. That's the introvert in me going like, no, you don't want to hang
Yeah.
out with me. It's
Yep.
fine. It's cool. I'm
Yep.
gonna go sit in my
You're
corner and
creating, yeah, you're creating the story in your head. And my response to that was going to be, if you reached out to your friend and said, hey, can we hang out? And if your friend truly couldn't because of whatever reason, they would probably tell you, but then I'm guessing they probably would say, but I can do it on this day, or but let's do
or
this on this
something.
day,
Or yeah, or like
or
let's
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually
Yeah.
something along those lines. But again, I'm always afraid to reach out, and I'm always like afraid to like say it.
Right.
And like I've told them, like I've explained it to them like over and over and over and over again. And
Right.
it's like when I'm in like their presence, it's like it's great. We all have a wonderful time. They listen to me and they hear me out on stuff. Um, but it's like for me, I'm like, if I'm not getting reached out to, or if like if they're not, that sounds bad. Like it's like saying like, I put in zero effort into a friendship. Um, but it's like, no, I do. Like I'll reach out and I'll say like, hey, like what's up? How you doing? What's going on? But if I'm not getting that, like, hey, what's up? What's going on? You're all right. Back,
Uh-huh.
it makes me just go, oh, like they probably don't care, which is probably this the furthest thing from the truth. But it's like
Right.
that's one of my struggles of like, it's really hard for me to open up and reach out to somebody. It'd be a lot easier if someone goes, hey, how you doing? And then I can go, whoop, like here, like I've been
You
good
can give
about,
it back to them. Yeah.
I've been really good about like a lot better lately of being more honest with my feelings. So like you asked me like, how's it going? Well, I just processed a bunch of shit today.
You
Here's
didn't
kind of
say
what
I'm
happened.
good. You didn't give like the road
I'm
answer.
all
I
right,
think
I'm
I gave the road
fine.
answer.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I would, or like sometimes I'll like, but if it's like a person I barely know, even then I'll be like, if I go to the gym, how you doing? I'm here.
So
It's
you're
like
not giving
I'm
it. You're
good. I'm not saying like
no.
I'm good. If I'm saying I'm here, it's kind of like my like not great, but I'm here.
Right.
I'm
I made it.
here.
Yep.
I'm present. I
Yeah.
made it to this place. And that's where like I even like we've even had a class on it, on like trying to count the little mental victories that we're having throughout the day.
Yes. And I want to go back to something, we talked, I think, throughout this conversation about, we mentioned the universe a couple of times. And I think you even mentioned when you were talking about getting a career or getting a job under the umbrella that would please your parents. And the universe kept kind of saying, nope, 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 like kind of pointing you in a different direction.
Yeah.
This is just a seed that I'm planting. And I'd be curious to hear in the next couple of weeks or whatever, if you want to circle back to it. I wonder if you're more likely to share if somebody first reaches out to you, right? So if
Yeah.
somebody reaches out to you and says, how are you doing? You might say,
I'm not
that might
doing
give
great.
you it gives you like okay, this is my turn to talk. You have a difficult time reaching out to somebody, but you also recognize that sometimes you don't have the opportunity to respond if somebody doesn't reach out to you. Is this making sense so far? You with me?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I wonder if that's the universe's way of saying, Anjay, you got to do it. Like, I'm not going to give this, I'm not going to hand this to you on a silver platter. I'm not going to give you this. You have to do this.
Honestly, this is, again, bring it back to the podcast. This is what this is. This is me going like, okay, I've taken this one thing so far.
Yeah.
And like the universe is like, well, dude, you can't be comfortable keep doing this thing. Like when I first started doing TikTok, that was scary. And especially when I got down to like the nitty gritty of me sharing my personal life, my traumas and my struggles. And then now it's like, I had this thought for like a couple months about doing a podcast. And again, like even like how I got like this recording equipment and whatnot, it was for a different purpose. It was for,
I love that.
To me doing like voiceover work. And like all of it was donated to me by my followers, and it was just like very overwhelming me. And I was like, okay, cool. And then when I tried to like, there was just like this giant wall of just going like me trying to process and trying to do like voiceover acting work. And there was like this big wall of going like, I don't think you should do this. Like, I don't really think this is something you really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't until I had the idea of doing a podcast, then like immediately the name for it came to mind. And I did a quick search on, Apple Podcast, and like, there's one with a similar name, but it's in Hebrew. And like, it's talking about scripture. And I'm like, they haven't posted in a few years. So I'm like, okay, that aligned up. And I told people, I appeared on other podcasts and I told them the name that I had in my mind. And they were like, I'm surprised that's not taken already.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, me too. Like, so I was like, okay. And then I just had like this thought. And then like, I told Joel about it. And he was like, dude, that sounds like an amazing idea. And I told him like the concept, and he was like, dude, hell yeah. And then and then I told him I was going to do it. And then I told him when I recorded my first episode and how like I cried because I took the leap. I did it. Like I recorded it.
What a proud moment.
I took the
awesome.
Step. Yeah. And it freaked me out because I was like, holy shit, I can't believe I just did that. I just did that thing. And like, I haven't put it, like, as of we're recording this, I haven't put it out yet, but hopefully soon. And I was like, holy shit, I did that thing. I took that leap. And like, you're probably right. Like, I should probably start learning to reach out to a friend, like, hey, I'm not doing so hot right now. Can we talk? Do you have time to talk? Do you have time to get together? Do you have time to do that? Because you're probably right. It's the universe kind of probably telling me, hey, bro, you can only go so far doing what you're doing. You have to take that step outside of the comfort zone and doing that. And then as a person of trauma, and I'm sure you've dealt with the same thing. It's scary because you've seen all the bad that has come from it.
Yes.
Like you've been thrown into the bad, and it's a very like trauma response to protect yourself and go, I don't want anything bad to happen to me. And like,
I'm good in my bubble. Leave me alone. Right.
Yeah. And that's why I always find like fascinating when like, people who've been through really traumatic relationships and they are able to, and then I'll go, when did you start being able to let people in, and like what made you get into this current relationship that you're in or whatever? And a lot of it is I had to take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got it. Yeah. It's like, you got to take the leap because instead of living in the what ifs, you got to do, or what could have happened or whatever, just do it.
Yep.
And for me, like, you know, I came to a realization of like, it's hard to put trust into people because, you may have been backstabbed before. Someone may have taken advantage of those feelings or taking advantage of your emotions like that. And from a male perspective, I think it's different from a female. For my experience, I should say, it's different from a female experience of what other females might have had to, other women, I shouldn't say females, other women have have dealt with. And uh and it's very like, but for me, it's like if someone's taking advantage of my emotions or me being vulnerable with them, like me being able to open up, and then they use that against me down the line. To me, it's, yeah, it hurts and it sucks, but that says more about them than it does about me. Like the fact that I was
Absolutely.
willing to be that vulnerable, the fact that I was willing to
Yep.
open up just shows
Yep.
my strength,
That's right.
which is weird when you put like strength and vulnerable in the same sentence, but it's the truth. It's such a
It is.
strength, because so many
It
people don't
is.
know how to do it.
Right.
And you can go into like talking about this podcast can go on for like 8 hours.
We could
it
go on
feels
for
right
like,
now.
we could do like a marathon of 24 hours with this.
Yeah, like but it's just like kind of like what, I don't know, it's just one of those things where like I know people have trust issues and they're all valid. Every single one of them is valid. But for me, the lesson I've been taking is I just kind of have to take that leap of faith and do the here I am.
Yeah. Here
Take
I
it or
am.
leave it.
This
Like
is,
here I am.
I'm
Like
doing
take it or
it.
leave it. Like
Right.
this is me. I'm tired of trying to be somebody that I'm not. And I've done that so much in my
Yeah.
life of trying to fit in with people and being like, I hope you like me.
Yes.
Like even like my relationships have failed because I've kind of done that in my past of just going
Yes.
like, I just want you to like me. Like I think you're great. I think you're awesome.
Yep.
I want you to think I'm
Yep.
awesome too. So I'm gonna mold
Yeah.
my personality to be who I think you might want me to be. And then that never
Yeah.
pans out. That never
It
works. It ends
doesn't.
up
It
burning in
doesn't.
flames. And like
Yeah.
while like a lot of my relationships when that have ended amicably and like peacefully and everything like that, like, hey, I don't think this is working. It took me a lot of like, I need to learn to communicate my feelings better. I need to learn to be able to open up. I need to learn to be
Yeah.
able to speak my mind. And again, this is where it all leads to, I got into therapy and I've
Yeah.
learned that like it's okay to talk and express. And like whenever my next relationship is going to be, if it ever happens, I'm very okay if I end up being single for the rest of my life.
When,
when it
when it
happens,
happens.
I'll put, yeah, we'll manifest it. We'll manifest it.
Yes.
I'll know that like, hey, like I'm being upfront with you and who I am from the beginning. This is me as a person.
Yes.
This is how I treat. Like I know I guess this is coming like the self-love talk is I know my worth and I know what I bring to the table. And I know like how understanding of a person I am. And now I know like I'm looking for someone who can match that energy
Yeah.
and
That's great.
can be like very understanding. Cause I again, it comes down to like the you got to be a man or whatever. And I'm like, I think it's better if I'm being vulnerable and going like, hey, this is my thought process. This is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling about this.
Yeah.
We can talk through it instead of before in relationships where it was a trauma response where if I like my last serious relationship, there was like a trauma response between both of us. We both went through very traumatic things within like a few
Okay.
months of each other before we like, well, I went through the death of my mom and then I met her and then she went through a very tragic thing. And
Oh,
then we
wow.
got together and we both, my opinion, didn't really process that. And we were really good about like just molding into each other and just being around
Gotcha.
each other, but not like ever talking about it. And then when we were both getting upset with one another, like if I was upset with her or she was upset with me, we would shut down
Gotcha.
instead of talking it through. But that was the trauma
Right.
response of like,
Yep.
nope, bad
Yep.
thing, don't, nope, can't, nope,
Don't
no,
talk about
no,
it. Don't.
nope.
Yep.
And it took me years to figure that out and look back at that relationship and go, wow, I thought she was the one. But I realized like where our downfalls were. And I was like, we never fought. How is that possible? We never fought.
That
And I
That's
was,
yes.
and I was like, we never had like a serious, like major argument, because as soon as the other person got mad, the one would shut down.
Right. So you learn never to
So
talk about the stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and then that eventually, like, it eventually turned into like, we started almost like distancing ourselves a little bit while still trying to maintain like seeing each other, like,
Yep.
but it was when we were together, there was, you could feel like a disconnect. And then like I've noticed that like I can tell like almost exact moments when I know when a relationship is over, and yet I still try afterwards, but I can
Right.
look back on it and be like, this exact moment is when it was over.
That's when that's when the plug might have been pulled, should
Yeah,
have been
yeah,
pulled. Right.
and I just kind of like, even like the last person I dated, it was, I knew the exact moment when I went, oh, this is over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
done, even though I'm still going to try, because I'm a sucker for trying and I guess putting myself through pain. But it's just kind of like, I'm gonna
Oh,
try. I
yeah.
can't say like I didn't try, I didn't put in the effort.
Right. Right.
But I was like, okay, I can tell like when these moments are in, and now it's the hunt to find that person where we're both putting in the effort and we're both
Right.
making a conscious decision to keep going.
And putting it out there initially and saying, this is me, like, here I am, and this is what I'm looking for, and being more, it sounds like you're in a different place than you were, that when that is presented to you, you're going to be able to say those things.
100%. The place I'm in, from like when I started CYA in July to now, is
Mm-hmm.
very different, and it's taken
Right.
a lot of work. And I struggled with, for a while, of going like, am I doing enough work? Am I trying as hard as I possibly can? And I had to learn to be kind to myself about it, because I had another
Yeah.
friend who was like, she wanted to be on a healing journey, but she went like full bore journaling, then
Oh,
like
so she went very
books,
aggressive. Yeah.
journaling, books, trying to find therapy, meditation, crystals, like all at once. And she was
Oh,
like
wow.
diving into it, and she was doing like inner child work, and like doing like journal, like guided journals and stuff like that,
Yep.
and like everything full bore at once. And it was like very inspiring, but I was like, it gave me like a, am I doing enough? And like,
Right.
hold on.
It's like your comparison, like the comparison
Yeah, I
complex
was,
there, right?
yeah, I was being like, I was comparing my own journey to like someone else's, and it's like, no, 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 I can't do that. You're doing the best that you can in the moment that you
Mm-hmm.
can. The fact that I've
Yep.
been consistently showing up to every single like class that I can
Yes.
come to, or at least like the Wednesday class is the class that I always go to. The fact that I've been showing
Yeah.
up consistently every single time, even on days when I did not want to go, even on days where
That's
I
amazing.
told
Yeah.
myself, where I was like, you need a break, you need to step away from
Mm-hmm.
this, and then I still showed
Yeah.
up anyways. And even if I didn't feel necessarily better after that class or something like that, it was still like, I did it. And
You did it. Even
and
if
that's the,
even if you didn't want anything to do with it, you forced yourself to do it.
exactly, that was the victory for the day, at least.
Yeah. And we always want to look for those victories in everything, right? We want
Exactly.
to
And
come out of the day and say, what did I do? What did I do that I'm proud of, or that was victorious to me today?
exactly. And I guess on that note, because I've kept you for a very long time, and I appreciate you so much for this. But
Of course.
I'm trying to end every episode with asking, what was a victory you had for the day? So,
Oh, I
Suzanne,
love that.
what is a victory that you had for today?
What is a victory I had for today? Oh my goodness. I'm trying not to, I think I had a couple. I'm
You
trying
can
to
name
think
more than
of,
one. It's fine. But for
I'm
me,
trying to think of, yeah, yeah.
it could be the smallest of small things. Like, you got up, you had water, you ate breakfast, you did whatever, to like, I stopped all war in the whole world, like whatever small to big thing.
Yeah. Okay. So here's one. Um, so my son had a little bit of a moment at school today,
Mhm.
that wasn't good, that resulted in a principal office situation. He can be impulsive and not make the right decisions. Big heart, but we have a lot to work on. And my normal reaction is oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. Oh my gosh, let me get his therapist in here more. Oh my gosh, let me email 800 people. Oh my gosh, let me call. Like, I want to fix it immediately.
Mhm.
That's the mom hat. That's not the therapist hat talking, by the way. The therapist hat knows a little bit better than to do that, to be reactive. So rather than that, we got home. I said, go to my bedroom, let's talk. And we talked it out. We talked a little bit about what happened. And he was able, because I remained calm, and I didn't have to go into fix it mode. I was able to hear him. And I think my energy gave him the opportunity and space to be able to talk about it in a rational way and almost problem solve through it. So I think that was a victory for me, to not jump into, how do I fix this for my kid, and how do I get this, how do I get it fixed, and I know it's not going to happen again, is it going to happen again? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But we worked through the process of why his choices were not okay. And he was able to at least verbalize that back to me. So I'm proud of myself for not jumping into mom fix it mode and allowing him to work through his process mode.
That is beautiful. I love that. Uh, for me earlier today, it was I allowed myself to relax this morning. So like Wednesdays are always kind of like my days off, right?
Okay.
But I was recording. You're the second podcast I recorded today.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So so like one was in the morning. So I had like morning therapy, and it was just like, do I rush and do I try to get myself to the gym or something like that? Or do you just allow yourself to relax and chill and like enjoy yourself for a moment? And that's what I did. And that was like one of my victories for today. But my other victory is um me unlocking what I unlocked in therapy
Totally.
and going like,
Yeah.
oh, like having that realization that like the shit that's beyond my depression and everything like that, which I've been battling my whole life, not just since my traumas that have happened.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh man, the depression is not my fault. Like it's not.
That's
It's
incredible.
just
That is a huge victory. Yeah.
it's something physical for me that now I have some tools to work on it. And I just went, oh, all right, cool. And then another victory is that I got to talk with you and you were able to
Yes.
do this with me. And I
Oh
appreciate
my
you
God,
so
absolutely.
much for your time. And so, yeah, if you are watching or listening to this, please go follow her. Again, Anxiety Alchemist on the TikToks and the Instagram.
Mhm.
She's amazing. She gives a lot. Oddly enough, we never talked about anxiety or like methods to deal with anxiety,
That's okay.
but she has a lot of that kind of content on her pages, and hopefully you can come back and we dive into those types of things. But
Oh
Suzanne,
my God,
thank
absolutely.
you so much for your time. I very much appreciate you. And to everybody, I hope you continue to be kind to yourselves and be good.